Hello folks, welcome to another edition of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. I'm Mark Foster. Today I will be talking about the subject of localism. Localism can be defined as a world or a society in which the focus, rather than being on larger units, such as regions or nation-states, instead the focus is on local neighborhoods or communities. And my feeling is that in light of the changes which I anticipate as being rather imminent in the world, perhaps a series of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, followed by war, as nations attempt to seize whatever resources are remaining following these disasters, that the basic fabric of most societies, especially modern industrial societies, dependent on the power grids, will simply break down. And consequently, people will be forced, out of necessity, to focus on their own local community. So that's what I will address in this program today. Basically, here is a summary of it. This is actually taken from my book, Unitive Socialism, which is at the URL unitive, UNITIVE, .Bahaifaith, BAHAIFAITH, unitive.bahaifaith.info. And I will go ahead and read this for you. If I or someone with similar views had influence over American society, its affairs might be handled very differently. Since partisanship is the rule of the day, and emancipatory perspectives hold little sway, I am functionally a pragmatist. In other words, a practical person focused on practical consequences. Avenues of cooperation and even compromise must be sought. Yet, given the widespread materialism in this world, little may be left following the collapse of the present order. Rather than concerning ourselves with personal freedom, which seems to be the hallmark of the day, particularly in the United States, we need to trust in the continuing guidance of the Universal House of Justice, the supreme governing body of the Baha'i world, and to be spiritually prepared for localism, which I think is going to emerge very, very soon. How soon, I don't know. I'm not a prophet, God forbid. I'm not even a seer, and I'm also not a futurist. Futurism has a very bad reputation in academia for the simple reason that futurists have been wrong a great deal. As a result, futurism, although it still exists, the World Future Society is still around as far as I know. Futurism has never really been established as an academic discipline with any great respect in most American universities. This is a quotation from E. Russell Cole, Sociological Thoughts. It is a blog maintained by E. Russell Cole, and it is from a posting called Radical Localism in the Network Society. And I will read this brief excerpt. In the contemporary landscape, there is a growing return to localism. I am designating phenomena such as the emerging economic paradigm, which reinterprets economic principles according to the interests of local economies. This economic localism has produced research that effectively argues for provincial public policies that prevent national, and worse, multinational retailers from entering and inevitably monopolizing local markets. Such foreign agents extract more resources than they reinvest in the local economy. Rather than procuring the merchandise with which they stock their shelves from local producers, these retailers import from distanced manufacturers that exploit cheaper, often offshore, labor. Localism is a political philosophy that is opposed to a tendency in American politics that this paper references as centralization, a social process through which political power is accumulated in a locus that is distanced, removed from local communities, their unique human ecologies, and their provincial political institutions. The localism I espouse is not a Luddite ideology, Luddite meaning anti-technological. Although it might appear romanticist in the sense that it valorizes cultural institutions that had a more complete, robust expression in previous historical periods, it is by no means a call to reenact what has transpired. I recognize that digital communications have transformed human geography. Well, I don't entirely agree with E. Russell Cole. Personally, I don't see localism as an ideal state of affairs. I would much rather see an organized global state with an emphasis on the grassroots level as well, but a central state of government. But I think that given the crises that are about to envelop the world, in my opinion, localism will simply be an inevitable byproduct, and we need to be ready for it. This is a quotation from a blog by Keith Preston, which is called "Attack the System: Pan-Secessionism Against the Empire." Anarcho-pluralism, as I conceive of it at least, is a brand of anti-state radicalism that has anti-universalism and what might be called radical localism as its core defining characteristics. It is anti-universalist because it rejects the view that there is one correct system of politics, economics, or culture that is applicable, much less obligatory, for all people at all times and in all places. As Russell Kirk observed, there exists no single best form of government for the happiness of mankind. The most suitable form of government necessarily depends upon the historic experience, the customs, the beliefs, the state of culture, the ancient laws, and the material circumstances of a people. Anarcho-pluralism advocates radical localism as the best possible method of avoiding the tyrannies and abuses of overarching Leviathan states and accommodating the irreconcilable differences concerning any number of matters that all societies inevitably contain. Now, I am not an anarchist. I am a statist. On the other hand, I think that in spite of that, I agree that there are tremendous differences. There is a great deal of diversity in the world. And as a transitional phase to a new form of global governance, that perhaps we need to go back to the grassroots level and begin rebuilding there. And so to me, localism is a type of rebuilding, reconstructing society from the bottom up. Right now, as I see it, the world is headed down the path of lawlessness, planetary anarchy, which I don't see as a positive thing, a breakdown in the infrastructure of societies, and perhaps even a complete disintegration of communication, transportation, and food distribution systems, as humanity, in its present state of despair, continues to unravel. The Universal House of Justice has been encouraging greater local consolidation or unity through a strengthening of the Ruhi Institute and related Baha'i activities. For those unfamiliar with Ruhi, Ruhi is a type of study group in which people gather together and consider various aspects of the teachings of the Baha'i faith in a systematic format, arranged by a coordinator, and basically go through a series of booklets, and then once a person has gone through that booklet, that qualifies that person to then present that material to others. And so, as a result, Ruhi, because it is so local, because it is so grassroots, if the world system, national systems, regional systems do unravel, that would allow something, some type of society, of spirituality, to continue on a very grassroots level. More generally, I think that the Universal House of Justice has been preparing the Baha'i world for the contributions that it will make on the grassroots level to the rebuilding of future civilization, or divine civilization, as Abdu'l-Baha has referred to it in his book, The Secret of Divine Civilization. One way I see them having done that, the House of Justice having done that, is by decentralizing authority and power, breaking down nations into local regions, establishing administrative bodies on the regional level within nations. So I think that basically the House of Justice is, it seems to me, fully aware of these changes that are about to take place, and they want the Baha'i community to be prepared. I will now read an excerpt from a letter written in 2010 by the Universal House of Justice. This was its Rezvan letter. Rezvan, which is in April of each year, is a time of festivity in the Baha'i world. In their efforts to present the faith plainly and unequivocally, the believers, meaning the Baha'is, have benefited greatly from the illustrative example in Book 6 of the Ruhi Institute, where the logic underlying the presentation is appreciated and the urge to convert it into a formula overcome. It gives rise to a conversation between two souls. Indeed, the civilization that beckons humanity will not be attained through the efforts of the Baha'i community alone. Numerous groups and organizations, animated by the spirit of world solidarity, that is an indirect manifestation of Baha'u'llah's conception of the principle of the oneness of humankind, will contribute to the civilization destined to emerge out of the welter and chaos of present-day society. It should be clear to everyone that the capacity created in the Baha'i community over successive global plans renders it increasingly able to lend assistance in the manifold and diverse dimensions of civilization building, opening it to new frontiers of learning. What the House of Justice is referring to there, in my opinion, is the relationship between the major and minor plans. The major plan is the plan of God, in which God, through everyone, using everyone, whether Baha'i or not, as pawns, in effect, to establish his new world order. In the minor plan, Baha'is are working to build their communities, which will also contribute in the long run to the major plan of God. So there is that kind of, I guess you could call it a kind of dialectical relationship between the major plan and the minor plan, which collectively will result in a global civilization. There was a bumper sticker that was popular a number of years ago. Haven't seen it recently. It said, "Think globally, act locally." That perhaps might be a kind of motto of the Great Reconstruction to follow the Great Unraveling, which is accelerating right now, and I think which will reach a very fevered pace very soon. And so as we focus on this local level, economies and governments should, as I see it, be redeveloped upon the foundation of small towns or large neighborhoods. All business entities, doesn't matter how large or small, must be regulated democratically by laws protecting localities, not stockholders. In other words, large corporations would not have the ability to force themselves into local communities, as is very common now, particularly with companies like Walmart, Kmart, and Target, probably the best known but certainly not the only ones. Community industries, whether they are cooperative or on a small scale only, privately owned, would focus upon the needs of workers and customers. And in this kind of localized society, the profit motive will be replaced by the service motive. So there you have it. That is my summary, briefly stated, of localism, and why I think that that is the direction that we are going in right now. And I would encourage people, including me, to be prepared for that, spiritually prepared. I'm certainly not encouraging people to be survivalists or preppers. I think that is the wrong direction to take. Instead of focusing on surviving, one should focus on serving. How can I be of service to others? Survivalism is backwards. Focusing on how can I and my family and whatever survive, purchasing guns to protect us from them, that is a completely wrong-headed approach, in my opinion. So I'm not talking about survivalism in that sense, but a kind of, I guess you can call it, spiritual survivalism, by being ready spiritually to serve others. I think that's ultimately what we all can do best. Figure out what we can do, what we can contribute to the ongoing process of maturity of humankind. Well, that wraps up another program, another Dr. Mark Foster show. Until next time, have a good one.